Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to write in Python a tracker for the Bitcoin price and the SP 500 price. So let's get started. To get started, you want to install Jupyter Notebook first. So you go to jupyter.org and you just follow the instructions here at install. So basically it asks you to use the terminal or the command window, and you basically type in pip install notebook. Once you installed it, you can run the notebook by Jupyter. We're running Jupyter Notebook, and then it automatically opens up a tab in your default browser, which is Chrome in my case, which should look something like this. So what is the terminal window? I will briefly go through this, but you can also Google this. Terminal window. If you want to install something, so the first line, you go basically open this and you type pip install notebook, which looks like this. Also, later on, if there is some things missing, if there is an error and it says package not installed, what you usually do is pip install and then the name of the package. So we will use Finance, Yahoo Finance package. So for that, you need to use this commando in the terminal to install this. I promise you don't need to do this every time, and it's more easy than it looks like maybe right now. But it's really just opening the terminal, or looking on your computer for terminal, clicking on it, it will open something that looks like this, and you just type it and then press enter, and then it shows a lot of lines, but you don't need to do anything more than that. So once you installed Notebook, like Jupyter Notebook, you will have a screen, and I opened one default script for you. So what the first thing we need to do is basically import all the packages. So the packages we're going to use are pandas. And this line means that to import a package, and package is something that other people developed, and then you can use it later. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel for some things like manipulating data or plotting some results. This means as PD means that you import this package of functions, of functionalities, with a certain name. So with a certain name. So later in the code you can use PD dot and then use all the functions that are available. You will see in a minute how this will look, but this basically makes the code more readable and more easy to read, and it's just good practice to keep it easy to read for everyone. So we'll also use NumPy, which we'll call np, and we'll use matplotlib.pyplot, which is used to plot figures, as you will see later. And then, because we're gonna import some data from live financial data from Yahoo Finance, we need to use this package, and we're gonna call it YF. So once this is all working, so make sure it works by pressing on this execute, or uitvoeren in Dutch. And if there's no error, then it should work. If there is an error, then go to the terminal and, for instance, type pip install Y finance and press enter, and then it will install some things. And then you run this again, and then it should work. So once this is working, we're gonna import and save the data. So we're gonna import the data from the website and then save it locally in our computer. So we'll start with the SP 500, and this is how it looks like, how to call in data with this package. You can always Google this type of commands, like how would I know it's called this? This is just Googling on this documentation. So Y Finance space documentation, and then you can find more stuff like this. But for now, you don't need to Google anything. I will just walk you through it. So once we have this line, we want to know, like, okay, which category or which data set do we want to import from this website? And in order to do that, we go to finance.yahoo.com and we search for S&P 500. I already did this for us, and what you can do here, then you want to look for the abbreviation in between the brackets. In this case, it's like a small roof, GSPC. So what we're going to do is copy this one and then paste it in between those quotes, and then it should look like this. So try to type with me here. It will really be useful if you follow along, and then before you know it, you'll have a working code, which is awesome, I think. So we have what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get from all this data that is important, we're just gonna select the last 5 years. And we do this by selecting this data set by using the same exact spelling, SP500, and then put a dot, and then we get the history. If we do it like this, we get all the history, but we just want to have the last 5 years. So then it would look like this. Don't forget the quotes here. Once this is typed, we have the right data set, the right information, but we want to save it locally as a CSV. So that means that we can use it later in pandas, so another package in the first line, to manipulate the data and to make it ready to be plotted in a figure, in a graph. I would like to save it as sp500.csv, and CSV is the data type. So once this is done, we can test it again by clicking execute. And if there's no error popping up, that means it's working. You could check if this is actually saved. So let's do that right now, because that's what we coded. And we go to the right documents. And what you see here is indeed 1246, so it's saved. Let's check how it looks. So it's a lot of data, but you also see that there's some dates, there's some open, high, low, close, volume, etc., etc. This is all this type of financial data. What we're going to use is the date and the close, so the final value at the end of the day, right before the markets and the banks close. So let's close this again. So now we're gonna load the data and to make it ready for plotting the data. So we do this by just defining a name. In this case, I said data underscore SP500 is, and we're going to use the pandas data frame to use it. So this is basically how you define it, like the syntax, how to write it down. On the left side, you see basically the name you give to this data, and on the right side, you do something to manipulate this. The same logic as what you see here. So we want to read basically what we just saved. So since we have this name, it should be exactly the same name. So we copy and paste this, and now the data is loaded. So we can just execute this, and if everything works, it should not give an error. So now the data is in the program again. So now we want to plot this data in a figure. So for now, you don't need to know exactly what this is. This is just some ways to make sure that there is a figure created and that we put some information in. So there's an empty figure, and we want to put the dates and the values in, and the labels, so the names and the title of the figure. So just keep in mind, this is kind of creating an empty workspace. So the plot, we're going to create a plot, and for that we need to basically get the right data. So what we want to do on the x-axis, which is first, we want to use the date. So what we did here is write down the same name as here, and then select all the dates. So this is like the column of this data frame. So all the different dates. On the y-axis, we want to use another thing, the closing values of the S&P 500. So it's first you define the x, and then you define the y. And let's show the figure, and let's see if this works. So this looks already quite nice. You see the value of the S&P 500 on the y-axis, and on the x-axis it looks a bit strange. But what is nice is that we already see a nice line of the value of the S&P 500 over the years. If you know a little bit about investing and stuff, you might recognize this line, so that's good. This is of course a bit strange. This is because the dates are saved as text or imported as text, and they've Python tried to put every day the full text, which is, that's why it took a little bit long. Took a little bit long to plot this, but it doesn't make sense, like it's ugly. So we want to change. How do we change this? We want to make sure that Python recognizes that this is not text, but this is a date, the same as kind of as a number. So it makes it look nice automatically for us. So what we're going to do is go back to here to load data, and we want to basically change the date column, right? So this is how we call the date column, same way as here. And we want to change this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this PD, the pandas, to change the text to a datetime format. It's an internal thing. You don't need to know exactly how this works, but you just need to know that you need to change it from text to something that the program can read and recognize as a day or a year or a month or all three of them. And this is how you change it up. Let's see if this works. So we run this, select this cell and click on execute, and then click on execute next. And then now you see it looks nice. Now you see just the years plotted. And it was way faster, and this was because it didn't lose time on putting all this text in the figure. So that's really nice. But it's still not complete, the figure, I would say. You want to know, like, what do the numbers on the x and y axis represent? Like, we know, but someone else who might see this figure, it might be a complete mystery. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this command to create a Y label. So a label, a piece of text, like a title for the Y axis. And what we're going to call it is value in US dollars. The same way for the X axis, as you've guessed, this is basically the date, but in years. And we want to give a title, a nice title on top. So we just see plt.title. And it would be the price of the S&P 500 in the last 5 years. As easy as that. So let's run it again. Nice. So now we see the value, we see the date, and we see the title. Now there's one thing left to do, is that we want to save the result. So we don't need to run this code again, but we can just save this figure and then maybe email it to someone, or put it on a website, or whatever you want to do with it. Put it in a report. So now we want to save this figure. It's basically this command. So remember that I created an empty workspace and I put a lot of information in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this workspace, this blank slate that is now filled up with information. So this should have the same name as this. And I'm going to save this workspace in a PNG, so a picture. And we put the quotes again, SP500, 5 years, .png. So this is PNG is the type of figure I want to save. You could also do a JPEG or so this one or this one, whatever is your preference, but I like to work with PNGs. And for now, this is fine. So let's run it again. You don't see anything different, but what you do see is I saved the figure. So let's open this in Chrome and see how it looks like. So this is what we just created. Awesome, right? You see the value, the date, price of S&P in the last 5 years, and the beautiful line. So if we go back to our code, we're almost there. Like, we basically, this is the video what I wanted to discuss in the video, but let's just add the Bitcoin price as well in the same figure to see how it compares and to see just basically, you know, how to do this. So we use the same logic. We would just want to merge this in the same figure. So import and save data of the S&P 500, but basically now we do the same. So we copy this whole part and we just adjust it. So what do we need to change? Of course, we need to change this. So I'm going to change it all into the right name. And everywhere where S&P 500, you change it into BTC for Bitcoin. So we save it under the BTC name, the last 5 years, with the same logic as before. The only thing now we need to look up is this abbreviation, because we don't know the exact abbreviation for this. So we go to finance.yahoo.com again, we type in BTC, and we look for the stuff between the brackets, which looks like this. So we copy this, we paste it here, and then it should work. So you can test this. I will just continue and test it at the end, because I know that it's the same logic, so there's no need to test it right now, but we'll test it at the end. So we'll just add this again. We read the BTC, and we also change the date in the right format. So from the text to the date format. So the plotting recognizes that it's basically a date and not just a piece of text. So remember the slow plotting. So this is beautiful. And then what we then finally need to do is basically copy this line. So we create another line here with other data. So we want to use the dates for the Bitcoin and the closing dates. So this should be exactly the same as this and as this. So let's test it. And you see two lines now. You see the blue line is the S&P 500 and the orange line is the Bitcoin price. Now the title is not correct anymore, so we're gonna add and Bitcoin, and the file that is saved is also not correct anymore. So we do S&P underscore BTC underscore 5 years. So if you run it now, you will see the right title, and you will also see that the figure is saved properly, as you can see here. And then there's only one thing missing, is the legend, because now we don't know if the orange one is Bitcoin or if the... Okay, so basically the only thing that is missing now is a legend, and we can do this by adding a label to the data when we define it. So in this case we just type label is and then quotes, and this is the S&P 500. So we do the same here for Bitcoin data, and then if we run it, we will see something. Nothing is happening. Why is this? Just because we define stuff, we didn't actually call it, give it a location, like where would the legend be? We type this. Let's see what happens. So now we see, just by giving a place for legend, it puts it on the top left corner, and now you can see that the blue line is the S&P 500 and the orange line is Bitcoin. You could always add like a location. Maybe we don't want it on the top left. In this case it makes a lot of sense, but maybe we can also put it in the lower left, and then you'll see it will be located here. But in my case, I like it on the top left because that's where the graph is quite empty, so that's perfect for us. So now you basically created a file that uh, can plot the data for the S&P 500 and Bitcoin. Feel free to use it yourself. I will put in the description down below, I will put some links to Jupyter, and I will put the link to this code so you can play around with it yourself. So just a small summary. We imported some packages to be used later, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel when coding. We imported and saved the data from the S&P 500 and Bitcoin. Then we loaded the data and we changed it a little bit to make it ready for plotting. So we changed, in our case, we changed the text information of the date to a format that Python recognizes as actual dates, so it makes it nicer to plot. And then we plotted the data with the title, with the labels, and with the legend. And finally, we saved this figure, so you can share this figure through email, put it on your website, put it in a report, whatever. So it was a blast. I hope you like it as much as I do, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.